Okay, so hola. We've been working with direct object pronouns for the last couple of weeks here. And so today we're going to start working with indirect object pronouns, or los pronombres de objeto indirecto. And when we deal with indirect object pronouns, we're talking about really to whom or for whom someone else is doing something. And you'll see some examples of this in English and then once again in Spanish as we go through. And we'll be working with these in this class at least largely separately from direct object pronouns. I will show you a little bit about how to work with them together, but it's really up to you to determine whether or not or to which extent you want to give that a try. So once again, we're going to go back to the basics. We're going to discuss qué es un pronombre de objeto indirecto. So what is an indirect object pronoun? And so once again, remember a pronoun replaces a noun, and that object pronouns can only be the object of a sentence. And the indirect object of a sentence indirectly receives the action of a verb. So once again, we said to whom or for whom someone does something. And the indirect object must be a person or an animal. Must be a person or an animal. So keep that in mind, and we'll work through how to identify these a bit in class the next time we meet as well. And just like we use direct object pronouns in English, we also use indirect object pronouns in English. And so write down these examples, please. And once again, a little later on, you'll see these examples again, and then the examples in Spanish, so you can see a little bit about how they look. So did the government give visas to the refugees? So what we're looking for to figure out the indirect object is to whom. So to whom did the government give visas? The indirect object in the original question is to the refugees, okay? And yes, the government gave visas to them. So to them as the indirect object pronoun, replacing the original indirect object to the refugees. Did Senora give a quiz to all of you? Now this one's a little more interesting, and we do have the to all of you as an indirect object pronoun, actually, you guys, you all of you, in the question. However, in the answer, she gave a quiz to us. To us is our indirect object pronoun in the answer, because if someone's absent says, hey, did Senora give a quiz to all of you today? You say, yeah, she gave us a quiz. She gave a quiz to us. So be aware of that. We're not going to be at a point in this class when we're expecting you to figure out how to answer questions with indirect object pronouns. But just so you're aware that when you are answering questions with indirect object pronouns, the indirect object pronoun can change. Did the women prepare food for the migrants? For the migrants, for whom did the women prepare food? For the migrants is your original indirect object. And then you're answering, yes, the women prepared food for them. For them being, in your answer here, your indirect object pronoun that is replacing for the migrants, your original indirect object. So right now, let's write down the indirect object pronouns. And some of these are going to look really familiar and really similar to other things you've done. You've used them probably since Spanish 1 with the verb gustar, which we've mentioned in the past in all likelihood really means to be pleasing. And so now you're going to use these a little differently. So the indirect object pronouns, to or for me is may. To or for you informal is te. To or for him, her, or you is lay. To or for us is nos. To or for you all in Espanol, only in Spain, is os. And to or for you all or to or for them is les. Remember as well that the indirect object of a sentence, siempre va a ser, will always be a person or an animal. And when you want to find the, it's always going to be a person or an animal, to whom or for whom the subject does the action, okay? And so to find the IO or indirect object in a sentence, you want to ask yourself, a quien, to whom, or para quien, for whom the subject does that action. So what you want to say in your notes packet here is the indirect object in a sentence deals with to whom or for whom an action is done. And it's very important to note here as well at the bottom of the first page of your notes packet that the indirect object will never be an item. So if you're considering an item, so like the computer, the book, the bird as a possible indirect object, that just can't happen. So perish the thought, banish the thought, it's not going to be your indirect object. Always a person or an animal. We do have here also a little bit of a comparison as to how we use them in English and in Spanish. And so once again, we do have the exact same samples. I advise that you write them down in both places, a point of comparison, okay? So in English, our first example, did the government give visas to the refugees? And yes, the government gave visas to them. Dio el gobierno visados a los refugiados. Sí, el gobierno les dio visados. Yes, the government gave visas to them. And once again, you'll notice that that indirect object pronoun goes before your conjugated verb for all of the examples here. Did Senora give a quiz to all of you? Yes, she gave a quiz to us. Dio la señora una prueba a ustedes? And your answer being, sí, la señora nos dio una prueba. Yes, señora gave a quiz to us. Did the women prepare food for the migrants? Yes, the women prepared food for them. ¿Prepararon las mujeres comida para los migrantes? Sí, las mujeres les preparó comida. Yes, the women prepared food for them, les being for them. Once again, it's important to know that these are typically used in the context of a conversation to avoid repeating ourselves nonstop, repeating proper names, etc., etc. And for our purposes now, you're going to be finding and replacing them, just like we were with direct object pronouns. And the rules for placement, if we're using just the indirect object pronoun, not the direct as well, is the same. So it's similar to what you're used to. You can either place them before a conjugated verb in a sentence that has only one verb, or you can attach them to the end of an infinitive. So that's your original AR, ER, or IR form of a verb, or a present participle, which that verb is an ando and iendo form. So I am going to have you type another couple of examples before you do a little bit of practice on your own. We will go over that practice a bit during our next class. So for the first example, we have un hombre enseñó el inglés básico a Kevin. Did a man teach basic English to Kevin? So to Kevin being the original indirect object. And so we're replacing a Kevin with le in our answer. Sí, un hombre le enseñó el inglés básico. Yes, a man taught basic English to him. For B, ayudaron los miembros del Grupo Beta a los niños. Did the members of Grupo Beta help the children? A los niños being our original indirect object being replaced with the indirect object pronoun les. Si los miembros del Grupo Beta les ayudaron. Thus, yes, the members of Grupo Beta helped them. So the reason why this would be les, even though we'd say them, it's really that they gave help to them, or they provided help to them, or provided them with help. So that's why we'd use les here. Ayudar is almost always going to take a les when you're talking about people, as opposed to a direct object pronoun. And finally, la madre de Kevin dio un abrazo a él. Did Kevin's mom give a hug to him? And our answer, a él being our original indirect object. And our answer, no, la madre de Kevin no le dio un abrazo. No, Kevin's mom did not give a hug to him. Le being to him. So once again, once you're done with the notes, work through some of the practice activity on the last page. If you have questions or as questions come up, please contact me, call me over and let me know, and I'm more than happy to give you a hand. Gracias.